From the box office failure of Black Adam to the DCU reboot, here's why Shazam! Fury of the Gods is tracking for one of the worst openings of DCEU history. So let's go back to where it all started from. Last November, we all saw Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's passion project Black Adam come out in theaters. It got bad reviews and didn't really do well at the box office as in the theaters. As a result, Johnson gave up and said he had no plans to return to the DC universe. And what followed is that the new co-CEOs of DC Studios, James Gunn and Peter Safran, are looking to shape the future of the new DCU, which is going to start right after The Flash resets the universe this year. But a movie like Shazam 2 seems to be mostly lost in the DC universe, which makes it hard to predict how well it will do at the box office. And according to Box Office Pro's latest prediction, Shazam! Fury of the Gods will make between $43 million and $52 million in its first 3 days. To start with the good news, this will be the most popular movie over the weekend of March 17th to 19th. But that's as good as it gets for DC's first 2023 movie. The highest estimate of $52 million wouldn't even come close to the $53.5 million that 2019 Shazam made in its first weekend, which was the DCEU's lowest. In fact, the first Shazam didn't actually make a lot of money, $363.6 million worldwide, but it got good reviews and showed promise for a successful sequel, leading to Fury of the Gods being greenlit as a sequel. Now, if we talk about other not-so-promising features, based on how well it did in its first weekend, Birds of Prey is the worst DCEU movie. But you see, the numbers don't prove that. In fact, it comes before Wonder Woman 1984 and The Suicide Squad on the list of the worst opening weekends. But that's probably because of the global pandemic. When both The Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman 1984 came out on HBO Max on the same day they were released in theaters. And I think the Zachary Levi superhero sequel would be a supersized failure if it got a low score here. At least Birds of Prey, which is led by Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, was rated R, and a spin-off of the 2016 movie Suicide Squad, which most people clearly didn't like. And it's possible that fans will lose interest in the current DC lineup in 2023, which could hurt a funny hero, mainly due to Gunn's plans for the future. And that makes me wonder, is DC Studios sacrificing today for a brighter tomorrow? You see, after James Gunn and co-CEO Peter Safran talked about the future of the DCU on January 31st, one of their biggest concerns was how to keep fans interested in the 4 movies coming out this year, except for The Flash. That's gonna be the start of the new DCU. Unlike the Batgirl movie, which was completely scrapped because new boss Safran said it was unreleasable, Shazam 2 had a reported budget of only $125 million and could still make money even if it didn't do as well at the box office as other movies. So that means DC's future doesn't depend on this movie, but a bad response from critics could hurt The Flash and Aquaman 2's chances of making money in the future. And keep in mind, these are the 2 films with much higher commercial expectations. Shazam 2 has less than a month until it comes out in theaters, and it's already clear that it needs to do more to make more money than its predecessors, simply because this is the age of sequels. Even DC's rival comic book movie with bad reviews, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, made more than $100 million in its first weekend. No pressure, Billy Batson, but it seems like Shazam's future in the DC universe is unclear. And of course, this bad prediction might not be a good sign for the character played by Zachary Levi in the new DC universe. Levi recently said that James Gunn and Peter Safran would decide Shazam's future based on how well the next movie does. He also added that a lot would depend on how well the second movie does. On top of this, Grace Caroline Curry, who plays Mary Bromfield in the Shazam sequel, recently talked about one of the things that went into Box Office Pro's estimate, and she addressed the reports that some DC fans aren't interested in Fury of the Gods because they think the shakeup at DC will make it irrelevant, but she thinks fans jump to the worst-case scenario whenever there's a chance, and hopingly expressed that it could also be the best-case scenario and be really great. Also, if it makes you feel any better, Shazam 2 is produced by Peter Safran, who is now running DC. That's a relief, but despite all this, I think Shazam: Fury of the Gods should do everything to move away from the Snyderverse. It goes without saying that Shazam: Fury of the Gods is in an odd place, which is too bad. It was made to be part of the Snyderverse, and almost all of the work on it was done when the DCEU failed. So the movie could stay the same and be a great way to end the Snyderverse. But let's be honest, that wouldn't be the best thing for the franchise, and it would make more sense to try to change things so that the Shazam movies can be part of the new DCU, especially since Peter Safran said in the DCU Chapter 1 announcements, there's no reason why any of the characters and actors in unreleased films are not part of the DCU. But the thing is, I don't think it would be that hard to fit Shazam into the DC universe, even if Billy's the only member of the Shazam family who moves to the new universe. But most importantly, there shouldn't be any footage of the characters in the Snyderverse at all. So Shazam could be talking about the versions of these heroes that we haven't seen yet. I also think that Shazam is one of the best things DC has made in the last 10 years, and it shouldn't be thrown away just to start over. Instead, it should be moved to the DCU as soon as possible. And, well, the first step is to stop going back to the Snyderverse. And this brings me to my last question. Can the DCEU's final movies avoid being tragic leftovers? When it was announced last year that James Gunn and Peter Safran would reboot the DC franchise under the DC Studios name, it was clear what that meant for the DC movies coming out in 2023. Shazam: Fury of the Gods was expected to be one of the lowest grossing movies of the year, but the lack of excitement about how well it would do at the box office could be bad news for other movies. Still, there's been a lot of talk about The Flash in the last few weeks, with reports of great test screenings, trailers that build up Michael Keaton's return as Batman, and the promise of a multiverse story that will set the stage for Gunn and Safran's arrival in the DCU. The Flash is clearly set to be the jewel in DC's crown this summer. On the other hand, Blue Beetle hasn't been talked about much, and in the last weeks, there have been reports that Aquaman 2 is having trouble with test audiences. And I think as the last part of the old DC franchise, this may not have been how it was supposed to end. And with that being said, that's all from me on Shazam 2, tracking one of the worst openings in DCEU history.